Hello everyone, it's Fiona. For my individual project, I will be talking about an interview that I did with a farmer before that assignment was canceled. So, the farmer that I decided to interview, her name is Joy Darrell Cobb, and she's the owner of Province Farms in McLeansville, North Carolina. So I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a background about the farm in case you wanted to perhaps buy some stuff from there or learn more about it. So Providence uses traditional sustainable approaches to raising pastured poultry and rare bred sheep through sustainable low impact practices. Free range poultry wander the property, rare bred sheep dot the pastures, and horses graze quietly alongside donkeys, all under the watchful eyes of livestock guardian dogs. And good stewardship of all that is in their top priority. From the insects to the frogs, the sheep, goats, and poultry, they are dedicated to serving their community through conservation, education, and responsible, sustainable stewardship. And their primary business is focused on pasture-raised poultry, both heritage bred and production broilers, lamb, mutton, pork, wool, and fiber products, goat milk soaps, and agritourism. So I will be reading the questions and her answers directly so that you guys can get the full grasp of what she said. So my first question I asked was, how did you come into being a farmer? And her answer was, I come from a dirt farmer background by way of my grandparents who lived way back in the Appalachian Mountains. So it's always been a presence in my life. When my husband's father quit farming, he grew a few row crops and raised a few beef cattle as a hobby farmer. He deeded us 20 acres, and we agreed to basically step in and restore, preserve, save the family farm. We had to start from scratch except for several buildings that were in various states of disrepair. Farms have to produce and are set up, tired, worn out soil, topography, etc. steered us towards pasture-raised meat production as opposed to row cropping or market gardens. And there's a lot more specific details of how we ended up doing what we do. So for this question, I was reminded of our movie from the class Anthropocene, when she explained how her family decided to go towards meat production rather than crop due to the worn out soil and topography issues. I was reminded how in the Anthropocene, how our land as we know it has changed so much due to overuse. Also from the Symphony of Soil documentary, which explained how complex cropping can get due to the intricate work of soil that goes unrecognized by many people. So for the second question, I asked, what farming methods do you use for these crops? And she answered, we operate using intensively management, regenerative agriculture, and permaculture systems. We also are predator friendly with no herbicides or pesticides. Everything works in concert, the domestic alongside the wild. Our goal is to leave the smallest footprint and plan for total habitat health. Through grazing management practices, we've been able to greatly improve our soil and forage outputs without any synthetic inputs. The grazing animals fix carbon, the poultry aerates and fertilizes. It's truly a concert of natural activity that brings this farm back from dead soil to verdant and fertile. So this question once again brings me back to the Symphony of Soil and how the dirt around us is a complex ecosystem. And it makes me glad to see people like Joy who are taking great measures to help revitalize the soil which has been damaged by humans over the years, and to help manifest a more diverse ecosystem to help all plants and creatures. Because as we learned from Dr. Robbins' lecture, Coffee, Frogs, and Workers, farms are greatly assisted by these complex environments, and it helps the earth as well. The third question that I asked her is, are you able to make a livable income off of your crops alone, or is this difficult due to the rise of commercialized grocery industries? And her answer was, in capital letters, no. And then she continued with, "We just started, and though we are barely in the black right now, it's tough. Certainly not enough to live off of, even for one person. Her husband still works a well-paying 9-to-5 job, and she says that they started off well ahead of the game as far as getting into farming. Big corp agencies makes competing in the mainstream market laughable. Consumers fall prey to marketing and labeling isn't trustworthy. We have to find niche markets and educate customers." For this question, I was reminded of the Grapes of Wrath film because that film showcases American farmers who are unable to live sustainable lives due to how the American economy is constructed. And also, small American farmers are put out of business by big corporations still even today. The fourth question that I asked her is, "How do you connect to the community?" And her answer was, "We sell at the Greensboro Farmers Curb Market and participate in several programs that mitigate food deserts. We have an on-site farm store and host several free events throughout the year. We host field trips and also do off-site programs to educate." This answer brought to mind one of our earlier readings titled Multiculturalism and Sustainability Education, because in that chapter we learned about students who use their service to educate younger children on gardening and agriculture, and I think that Province Farms is doing something amazing by reaching out to families and children in order to teach them about small businesses and sustainable agriculture. The fifth question that I asked her was, "How has recent drastic changes in weather affected your yield? How are you adapting to combat these difficulties, and what comes with climate change?" Her answer was, "Unprecedented rainfall that includes tornadoes, hurricanes, and then wicked heat puts a tremendous amount of stress on our animals, especially when the temps are so out of season. I'm constantly working to create living situations for them that mitigate the crazy heat insofar as to be putting bagged ice into shaded areas during crazy hot times. This past year, our breeding rams suffered from heat infertility. No lambs this spring. And it's only going to get worse, so we will have to take even greater measures to create deeper shade. We don't confine any of the animals, but encourage natural living for all of them. Even just 2 years ago, this wasn't an issue. They can't adjust on their own anymore." This was the most interesting answer to me because I was personally shocked by all of the consequences for the livestock industry when it comes to climate change. We learned a lot in movies and readings about how climate change and living during the Anthropocene has changed and is continuing to change life as we know it from an agricultural standpoint. And we see many examples in the Anthropocene movie especially, but we don't see how this affects animal farmers. And I just found this all really fascinating. It's a consequence of global warming that I just didn't think of until after she told me about it. And the final question that I asked her was, "Where do you think the farming industry will be in 10 years?" And her answer was, "If nothing changes, big corp agencies will supply all of the world's food. It will be a mass produced, tasteless, and overprocessed. Poor food begets poor health. We need a total system overhaul where folks are growing tomatoes and lettuce, for example, instead of whatever the stupid HOA says can be planted in front flower beds. People need to take back their food system by supporting small local farms and learning to grow some of their food themselves. Shut down big corp farm welfare programs and start supporting smaller growers in the communities that they serve." This final question is, of course, one that relates to one of our most recent topics of larger corporations taking over the world and putting small local businesses out of the job. So in the Bottled Life documentary, we saw how large corporations like Nestle can come into small towns and easily take over, and how ignorant some people can be to the consequences of this, such as climate change with the unnecessary plastic packaging and the loss of jobs for many in a farming standpoint, not necessarily the Nestle example, and how they have amazing products that are right under their noses, like how in the documentary people living in New York had some of the best tap water in the world, yet they were some of the biggest consumers of bottled water. And I think that everything that we've learned is shown in this statement, that there needs to be a degrowth, which will result in a better climate, more small businesses, and healthier people. So I hope that all of this was very informative to all of you, and let me know if you have any questions about the farm, and I will try to connect you. Thank you.